On today's episode, we get to chat with our pals, the very smart and funny Amy Choi and Rebecca Lehrer. Amy and Rebecca are the dynamic duo behind Mash of Americans, a creative studio that helps their clients understand and connect to the dynamic, diverse, modern American audience. They reveal and recenter stories on the voices of the future, the voices you don't hear enough today. Important to note here, when I started working on the initial idea for this podcast 4 years ago, they were the first people I called. They have successfully launched a variety of shows and were so kind to share their knowledge with me. So thank you. They recently launched Grief Collected and Love Noraebang, two of my favorite podcasts right now. First, let's talk about Grief Collected. Grief is both a deeply individual and collective experience. In the arc of this show, they pursue an expansion of our understanding of the many dimensions of grief as an experience of our bodies, to our communities, to our governments, to our cultures. They're pursuing the answer to the fundamental question, can we change the shape of our future by processing our past? And second, Love Noraebang, a fun romantic comedy podcast set in contemporary Los Angeles. It's kind of an homage to K-drama and telenovela. Familiar tropes like business enemies thwarting love, secondary love interests, long-distance drama, companies worried they're being taken advantage of for their money. But in the end, it's all about two people falling in love in LA. And by the way, Love Noraebang was nominated for an iHeartRadio Podcast of the Year award. Bravo. I'll have links to both shows in the show notes. This was an extremely fun conversation, and I hope you really enjoy it. Let's go. Very excited to have you on this. I sent you a few questions, which end up being like the most complex, like SAT, and you both are very smart people. So I thought it was really funny that one, you took liberties with the quiz and just gave lots of answers in some instances, and then also just decide not to give answers at all in some of them. So
look, this is a good setup for who we are, right? We're like, that's a great question. I'll tell you how I want to answer it. That may or may not be a direct response to it.
And then you just jumped in and like, I'll answer for the other person. I know this is theirs. So
I heard that happened.
Yes. I'm going to start with words to live by. Becca, what do you think Amy's words to live by are?
Oh God, what did I write?
Oh, wow. Don't fuck it up.
Oh, it's pretty close. She starts off with life is suffering, period, with a very quick JK, and then maybe not kidding. And then love as much as you can, have adventures, and then just went on to a series of words to live by. But I want to hang up real quick. I just want to go back to, life is suffering, because what's really funny is I wrote a short, that the one we're actually going to production in April with, short narrative piece. And I'm not joking, after the title page, I have this very first line above the script that says life is suffering. And it's, when I saw that, I was like, wow, because I don't actually see that a lot. I don't see a lot of people actually, just
you and me, Dwayne, you and me, whatever forces brought us together.
I love it. And so, Amy, what do you think Becca's words to live by are?
Get off the internet.
Twist. I love it. You guys live and work on the internet. And, I saw the post today, by the way, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the internet's extremely overrated, and we need to get off of it. No, hers life is short. Love. Boom.
Oh, well, see, this is actually a perfect, it actually really does encapsulate our relationship, that at the second layer of everything, we have so much in common. And the second layer of everything involves love.
Yeah, I love that. You nailed it. And it's true. I mean, you all are I love both your points of view on life, because you're very, you bring so much to the table. And I think that's what makes you both such great creatives. You're extremely smart and brilliant, but you also have two opposing views in a way, but also ones that align. So it's kind of a cool dynamic. It's been fun to watch over the years. Since one of you didn't answer this question and the other one guessed for the other person, Amy, I think you know Becca's favorite book. What is it?
Pride and Prejudice.
Is that correct, Becca?
It is, because it's the greatest book of all time. I'm actually due for a reread, and actually Amy, and this year Amy and I are doing reading club together, just trying to make space in our work time too to read books. And I think there should be a Amy and I should do Pride and Prejudice read at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I just think every time I read it, which again, I can't quite quantify, but it's got to be, it's probably 20 times. I don't even know, 25 times. There's no measure. It's endless. Wow. But first of all, I pretend to forget the end. And then Neil always finds me. He's like, we have to leave the house. What are you doing? And I'm like, what's going to happen? Well, Darcy. But I think that the layers of, speaking of living a life and bringing that all to every experience you have, I recommend to anybody revisiting whatever art or book or poetry, any kind of art regularly in your life. Pick one or pick a few and seeing how it changes for you over time with your life experience. That for me is one thing that Pride and Prejudice does very easily. I'm like, you know what? Mrs. Bennet seemed like a real asshole when I was young, but now I read it and I think she's really just trying to figure out within the confines of the society she's in how to make sure her daughters like live, how to make sure that they can thrive in what in her limited way, what she understands thriving is, right? Like they have a home and they have food and they'll have like a decent, okay husband. And like, that's what she understands from that period. So, and actually her husband, Mr. Bennet, is actually kind of a neglectful dickwad who loves only one of his daughters, so and that's as a young person, I saw that totally differently. Mm-hmm. I still don't like Mrs. Bennet. She's a twit and says the stupidest things and is very vapid. I don't want to hang out with her, but I think there's a way in which I have more compassion for what she's trying to do. And anyway, so that's the kind of thing over time. I just feel like I don't know. I love revisiting and Darcy. Ugh.
Do you dip into like your favorite passages and like read 10 of your favorite pages or scene? Or when you do a reread, do you start beginning to end?
Beginning to end.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't have that for me. It's not like this is my favorite page. I definitely will sort of skim quickly through some of them where I'm like, I don't need to read about this ball in Meriton. I don't know how you pronounce any of the names of the British towns. So I'm just like, so in my mind that like, there's some where I'd be like, I know what happens here. It's not that I don't care about the soldiers. They're being creeps and the younger daughters are just so dumb. But it does, I don't know. And anyways, and I love there's all these literary memes about Pride and Prejudice and all these things now. There was one that was so funny. It was like a review on Amazon or Goodreads, which was 1 star. And it wasn't meant to be funny, but it was something like just people going back and forth to each other's houses all day. And I was like, that's exactly right. And
that's life. That's what else are we doing? I mean, that is what we do, right?
I love it so much.
Well, that's like the plot of Mad Max. Right? Fury Road is you're just driving in one direction and then you drive back on the same street. It's a great movie. That's a movie that's like almost 4 hours long or something.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Because it goes by so quickly. It happens so quick. It's so visceral that it's like, oh my God, was that only
Well, you drive really fast down this one road.
Also, I love low stakes gossip just as a person. So, and Pride and Prejudice feels just like a lot of low stakes gossip. They're like, no, she ran away with him before. It's just also how social norms have changed and how lucky we are, despite the chaos of this time, to be, for me, like to be a woman in this time versus 150 years ago. I mean, you're just like, they worried that their whole family would be shamed because she like ran off with some stupid guy. Wickham, the worst. But and then it's like, because then she would not be a virgin.
Well, I think you guys have your next series. I think you need to do a recap series of Pride and Prejudice between the two of you reading it simultaneously and over like a mini series, like 4 episodes. A recap.
Oh my gosh.
Invite your
I'm
listeners
excited to hear.
Take questions.
Does Colin Firth make a cameo? Because I would like that.
I think you should. It only makes sense that he would.
Thank you.
That's how I feel about The Sun Also Rises, which is really funny because it's my favorite book of all time. And what I've enjoyed about reading it, because I do try to read it every few years, is that I pick up every new version that comes out at Barnes & Noble or the bookshop or whatever. Whenever I see one at the airport.
So you have all the covers and the reprints.
But not only is the cool the art around it, but also like they'll all have different prefaces and they'll actually give me a new thing that they were like, we brought in this professor from Oxford to write a preface. And I'm like, I didn't know that about this character. And like every time I pick up one of these new books, I've learned something new about it, like historical and academic. And I was curious, Pride and Prejudice, have you picked up multiple versions and seen any of that? Have you experienced that yourself?
That's a great question. Especially as all this stuff becomes in the public domain, there's always more versions of it. I took classes on it. I feel like I read it on my own. I read it in multiple classes, but but now I have it on my Kindle, so just read the same one. But I do watch all the movie versions and then the interpretations, like Fire Island, which was Joel Kim Booster's sort of Pride and Prejudice, gay Fire Island 20-somethings, and I like, and once you know that layer of it, it's totally delightful. You're like, of course, she's such a Mary.
Well, how about Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies? Have you read that?
I have not read that, but was very popular.
It was.
Maybe it's just because I don't love zombies stuff. But
this is another divergence between me and Rebecca and our cultural consumption. I love zombies.
Have you read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies?
No, I haven't read none of those things.
So
I've read neither of your favorite books, so I have 2 books to add to my reading list right now. Mm-hmm.
I read, I think the same time, I think it's the same author, came out with, what was it? The Lincoln Vampire Killer. And it was, I read on a flight and I was so tickled by it because I'm sure the Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies is the same way, where like it's mixed with Civil War fact, mixed with the fact that Lincoln was a vampire killer. And like, so you're reading it and you're like learning about these crazy wars and then like, battles, and I'd Google them like that was real. And then like, and then that night he went and killed a bunch of vampires. I'm like, God, it was such an interesting device to like learn more about this. And I'm a big Civil War buff, but I learned things that I didn't even know about the Civil War. It's very fun. So Amy, we got to dig into this. So what is one of your favorite books of all time? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Literally, I said this. What? No, this is not a question I can answer. A book that comes to mind.
Yeah.
It's not
Could be anything.
I can tell you what I'm currently reading.
Nope. When you think about high school, what was one of your favorite books in high school? Let's go nostalgic.
Darkness Visible. Well, it's a memoir.
That works.
So it's not fiction.
That's a book.
100%.
That's a book.
It doesn't say
Visible.
what fiction.
It was, which is by William Styron, and it is his memoir of depression. And I had read A Tidewater Morning, and I had read. We did like a I don't know, like a southern a tour of the Tidewater and like honors English my junior year, and. So we
Faulkner.
Sure. Yeah. We read a lot of Sound and Fury. We read, and then we had read A Tidewater Morning, which is Styron. And then it feels weird that this like old white Southern man was so relatable. But then I was like having a period of depression my senior year. And then I read his memoir and it is astonishing. And he just really describes what depression is, and that he has one image that he goes back to all the time, that's like when he thought that he had like a glimmer of hope that maybe the depression was dissipating. He had a dream of a little girl playing the flute, and I think about that, a dancing girl playing the flute. That's
amazing. I mean, so clearly this book has to be in your top 5.
It's still on my bookshelf. It's definitely. I'm sure it's. I don't know. These are impossible questions.
What I'm confused.
You should have seen me with that movie one. The movie one. I have like 300, and I'm just like battling. And it took me like 6 weeks. I'm like, all right, how am I going to battle? This movie versus that. And then you had to like really. And I'd spend like the day thinking about it, and then I'd come back like this one won, and then like it took forever.
But I feel like what I'm confused about is why you don't understand the definition of a book. You're like, but this one is nonfiction. I'm like, but that's what? Yeah,
that might be the problem. I mean, that might be where we are. Like that might be.
We don't understand what a book is.
Maybe, but there's just so many. But it wouldn't like jump out at me to describe that as my favorite book. The boundaries of think about high school was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, or books you love.
And that's what I had to do with this
I can
list,
tell you
by the
books
way.
I hate. I'll tell you a book I hate. Okay,
Okay.
2 books I hate. Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead.
I love that you looked off camera, by the way, before you delivered that. You're like,
Oh,
the disdain that you have,
drama.
that you had to like,
I remember starting in high school, and it was a period. I feel like maybe it's like that was like the Andrew Tate of the 90s, where it was like boys were reading it and being like, "This is so right. This is just right. This is just like describes masculinity." And I was like, oh, all these boys like this book. And I started to read it and I was like, this book is so fucking dumb. I can't believe it.
Do you remember the scene where Baby gets handed the fountainhead in Dirty Dancing?
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
It's the shitty waiter that gets her sister pregnant and then doesn't take responsibility for the baby. And he gives her an underlined copy of is it the Fountainhead? I'm going to look this up.
I'm sure it's Ayn
Interesting.
Rand because like somehow it's like somebody else's responsibility, never yours. And everything was so black and white. I was like, this isn't right. But I was it was actually a very formative moment because I went to my English teacher and I was like, Mr. Bellin, I'm a little embarrassed, but I started this book and everyone's talking about it and they love it. And I think it's really bad and I don't know if it's me, and I'm like embarrassed to say that I really don't like it. And he was like, oh no, it's a terrible book. He was like, those kids are idiots. And I was like, oh great.
It was the Fountainhead. I just confirmed on Reddit. Mm-hmm.
It was
the shitty waiter
building.
hands her an underlined copy of the Fountainhead to explain why he's a dipshit.
Yeah. He's like, you see, because I am Howard Rourke or whatever the fuck. Anyways, that, and then I just read a book and everyone's loved it. Jennifer Egan's The Candy House, and Amy knows. And I had to read most of it to confirm. But I was like, what is everybody talking about? What is happening in this book? Anyways, not to be shitty, we mostly love books.
Yes.
But I just wanted to name 2 that were not working for me.
I think it's important that we do. I think that was important that we do. Because, and I'm also I'm super anti in the modern world absolutism where you either love this book, and if you don't, I don't get it. I don't get you.
Right.
But at the same time, you can also be like, I fucking hate that book. Like, I've never been able to relate to Kerouac. And I remember like in college, I was like, my friends were like, oh, it's so powerful. And I read it, I'm like, I don't get this. I don't relate to this at all. Like, I don't
Totally.
And that's a little bit as I've gotten older when I look back at Hemingway stuff, because I love all of his stuff. I don't relate to it the same way I did when I was younger and a little bit more confused and more frustrated and more suffering, I guess. I don't know.
Do you have a favorite
Kerouac
poem?
was one I would always say, like, I felt like I was like, get off the road. What are you doing on the road? That's how I felt when I was reading
Just
it.
going back and forth to people's houses.
I was like, you got to get off the road, Dean. Like,
Yeah,
come on.
honestly.
Wait, but do you have a favorite poem? Why is that not on your list of questions?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm a big Poe fan, only because that was kind of like the first stuff that really I could feel. I remember being in 6th grade and reading Edgar Allan Poe and The Raven, and I'm like, I get this. Like, I really like, and I'm very anxious. I'm a very anxious person, and so Poe's stuff as a kid. To your point about being relatable, I'm like, I get the way this feels. Like, this is my journey. This is the suffering. Do you have a favorite poem?
I have a favorite poem, yes. It is Falling Water by John Cady, who is still alive, another old white man from the Midwest. And it's a long poem, and it is about his marriage. It's about love, and but the premise of it is looking at beautiful homes and falling water outside in Pennsylvania, and the relationship he has, because I think he lived in Oak Park at the time, or he and his wife did at some point in their relationship, and so it like kind of looks at all these homes that Frank Lloyd Wright had built. But it's about like what the idea of home, what happens in a home, what happens when the home starts disintegrating, what happens when like the relationships inside the home start disintegrating. And it is just astonishing. It is just, it's so, 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 so beautiful. And I've actually never been to Falling Water. I've never actually gone to visit. And it's like, it's a weird thing for it to be like, I don't have a bucket list, but maybe I'll make one now. For it to be like high on my destination because it's very easily achievable. I just like have not made it there. But that poem, I read it beginning of senior year of college, and it was like transformative. It's so good.
You have to go.
I have to go.
Like, I need you to go as soon as possible.
Water, yeah, Falling Water feels to me like it holds up to the dream. I did it once on a drive across the country, and I was like, can I live here? And I don't even like Pennsylvania. That's beautiful.
I love that.
I feel it's so interesting. I feel like the things you read also as a youth, we're talking about some of these things and why they stick. It's why like I still like music from, 1994 the most. And I'm like, I got
there's so much science behind that.
There is. Well, your brain is just like formed in a certain way. What I was like,
yeah, but everyone should say 1994. I don't care what age you are. 94 should be it.
Yeah, they're like, didn't you know?
Yeah.
De La Soul and okay, but yeah. What if I was like Warren G. Regulators, one of my favorite poems of all time?
I'd be yes.
But I do think like being introduced for me to Emily Dickinson at that time, which is funny because the more you know about any of these people, how complex they actually were. But those poems have the beauty is there's so many layers to them. So you read it and the words are so accessible. Like Nobody, that poem by Emily Dickinson, is just one of the ones where it feels so. I remember memorizing it as a child, and now when you know about her and what her life was like, it's so even more complex. Or all of our loneliness and just great art transcends time, and
So, Becca, do you know what Amy's celebrity crush is?
Is it a member of BTS or all of them?
She has two answers. So you have two. Yes. So one is a member of BTS, and the other
of the BTS.
The BTS.
They're kind of like the Mars Volta, the BTS. So do you?
RM maybe? Is that the one?
No.
Oh, come on.
Jin.
Yes.
Jin.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
But then who is the love of my life? I guess it's unfair to call him a crush.
The love of your life? I feel
it's just it's just right there. It's hiding in plain sight.
It's true.
It feels like these things evolve by the moment. Keanu, obviously.
I was like, do we know each other at all?
I'm so sorry. I was
about to stop the recording and be like, this is over. You guys figure your shit out.
I'm sorry, because mine were more like not all time. Mine are more like, mine, you'll guess them. You know them.
Amy, do you know Becca's
Diego
crush?
Luna.
Boom. Yep. She has another one. Can you go 2 for 2? You got the first one right.
There's another one?
It's another one of the ones where you're like, you should watch this Star Wars things because he's naked in it or whatever. Or like Dune.
Him, Oscar.
Yes, Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac. I was about to say Pedro Pascal because I have been obsessed and they're best friends. And so I put them together. And then I was like, do I start writing fanfic about Pedro Pascal and Oscar Isaac? But then I was like, that already exists in the world. I'm sure I just need to look for it.
Yeah, we could read someone else.
Yeah, but I feel like you'll bring a different point of view to it. And I think you should definitely check.
There's no limit to art here.
Yeah, just get a page out and see what happens. Just knock out a page and see where you go with this. I think you should. All of these are great options. All 4. I mean, there's not one.
Oh God.
We were literally watching. What movie were we watching the other night? DC Super Pets. Don't know if you've seen it, but one of the fun things
that we were watching.
Yeah, one of the greats. Neil, what's actually very fun to do is because all these big animated features have amazing actors doing the voices. And so it's a very fun game to play, which is like, whose voice is that? And then suddenly in that one, I was like, is that Squirrel Diego Luna? And Neil was like, yes, it is. Like he looked it up. But then it's like on IMDb. It's a very, very, very fun game. And then, a good one happened yesterday, which was Neil was like, what do you think Bono's real first name is? And I was like, it's something like Paul. Guess what it is? It's Paul.
Hey.
Really?
Yes. I know. I was like, I actually don't. I have a very good brain that does hold things like that in its folds. But that one's one that was just accidentally correct. Like, I feel like if you guessed an Irish man of a certain age's name, you probably have like 4 or 5, then you get it right.
Mm-hmm. Remember that story? This is the story that stays with me about Bono, is how he like flew a pair of his sunglasses across the world.
I don't know.
Do you remember? It's like an apocryphal story about Bono going to like some climate conference in the 90s, except what he did was then like get a seat on a plane, or maybe a plane for his sunglasses.
You know what? I love Bono. And when I would say a highlight of my life was watching U2 play in Pacaembu Stadium in Sao Paulo, a U2 concert with a bunch of Brazilians, and Mega, my best friend from college, is one of my top life highlights. I danced so hard that I peed on myself. That is for all the people to know. And lots of crazy things happen. I'm like, does that person being pulled on stage? And I was like, I'll cry with or without you, and I'll be in my, every one of them. That's all.
Yeah. What a journey for you. That was beautiful.
What a journey. What's the Edge's first name? What do we think? Paul also.
V. I know. It's like Michael. It's Michael or Sean or Paul. Well, guess what? Guess what the internet's going to tell me?
And I'm kind of into
Edge.
the fact that he flew his sunglasses over, because I think it'd be very uncomfortable to have a conversation without him. And I'd be like, no.
You guys.
This is not who you are.
Yes, I forgot. I was wrong. It was not Michael or Sean or Paul. It was David. So
wait,
that's what the Edge's first name is.
Bono's first name is David?
No, the Edge's is. Bono's first name is Paul.
Bono's is Paul David. Paul David Hewson.
And his daughter, Eve, is starring in my current favorite movie, which you're going to get, TV show, which is our pop culture current obsession, which is Bad Sisters. And her character in that is called Becca, and that's how you bring it all around.
Well, this is a great podcast. This is amazing. It was thank you for being on here. I think we wrapped it. I think we got full circle. We got there. That's I haven't watched that yet, but I've heard good things.
Loved.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go. We're gonna one more question. I'm gonna jump just because I think it's very interesting. Is film, because film's very important to us. And you kind of by the way, Amy, yeah, your answer on this was fantastic. I appreciate this sort of commitment to just not following rules. So, Becca, can you name one of Amy's favorite movies?
She loves Top Gun. Even though she
didn't even make the list.
That's
Didn't even make the list.
She said she knows every line, even though she hasn't watched Maverick yet.
No, well, see, that's the thing, is that is the movie that is embedded into like my nervous system for whatever reason, but it's not one of my favorites. Terminator 2 is also embedded into my nervous system, but it is one of my favorites, but it's not one of the, I don't know, the 7 that I responded to Dwayne on.
Okay,
I'm going to time out there real fast.
Train to Busan.
That's
yep,
one of them.
did it. Good job. That was impressive.
Zombies, Koreans, angry, mad, fighting, scary.
But also,
those are all highlights of things that I will never watch.
Father-daughter love story, and it's about redemption. It's about what he does for his child.
I don't even know what it's about. That's why I'm just telling you. I know the little.
I haven't watched it. I need to. I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. I haven't, but I need
Dwayne,
to.
it's literally the best review I ever saw of Train to Busan was like, no notes. It is just a perfect movie.
I've heard, I mean, it's on every list I've seen that I appreciate that aligns with the stuff I like. It's always in there, and I haven't had a chance yet.
Wow, I'm so
behind on everything.
But that movie is also now like was like 8 years old. It's got to be older than, because Peninsula came out 2 years ago, and the sequel's not as good. It like looks amazing, but the movie itself is not as good as Train to. Oh my God, Dwayne.
I'm gonna send you a note the moment I do. I wanted to time out earlier. Like it was. Where did you get your film? Like when you were watching Terminator 2, who were you watching that with? Like what inspired you to see that? Like you've thrown out a lot of really good, incredible films of the 80s and 90s. So where did your film influence come from?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think I was like, I don't know, because I was like very much like what do they call them in the 80s and 90s? Latchkey kid. Like from the minute that my sister was like barely old enough to be responsible for a child, she was responsible for me. But then when she was in high school, like she had her own life. So I think we had cable and we had HBO and MTV. And so I think I watched, I know so I think I just like watched on repeat what was available. And I also like Terminator 2, I recorded like over some like promo VHS cassette. You know, you put like the Scotch tape over the little gap. And that was one of the movies that like I watched to death and had to record several times on a VHS cassette. So because I could say very easily like my music and my book taste from a kid was shaped by my sister because I just had what she had.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like reading a lot of books that I was too young for, or
right. That
like,
makes sense.
I think that's where my love of like dance music came from, is because like whatever like, you know, synthy electro stuff that was like popular in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, all came from her. Like I think for her 50th, I'm going to try and get tickets to Duran Duran, which was the first concert I ever went to that she took me to.
Wow.
Yeah, when I was like in 8th grade. So I think like, but I don't know where the movie thing came from. But there were some that like really got in there. And Terminator 2 was one of them. Like we watched it like a few months ago. And like I know it beat for beat. I was like, oh, the puddle's going to shake now.
It's so good.
It's so good.
I think if I watched in that realm, I haven't seen Jurassic Park in a million years, but that was one that stuck from that genre where like when the eye comes down into the car, like I saw in the theater, or like Speed, which I definitely saw in the theater in 6th grade.
If you're wondering if I saw it 8 times in the theater with the same group of girls, I did.
Well, I mean, it's a very important film.
It is.
It is.
And they're so handsome in it, both of them. And speaking of which, I went on an airplane recently and now I'm on like a Sandra Bullock as a hero kick, which I was like, Lost City. It turns out when you're away from your children on a plane watching anything, you're like, is this the best movie I've ever seen? I was like, is Sandra Bullock a national treasure?
Yes. First of all, yes.
With Channing Tatum and then Brad Pitt in that movie. I was like, and then I'm trying to explain it to Neil. It's completely nonsensical. And Harry Potter's in it too. And the whole thing is, I was like, this is a perfect movie. I mean, I was crying,
they did a
laughing.
really good job with it.
I enjoyed every second, but it was in the line of, she's still great 30 years later. That's all.
Oh, she's fantastic.
I watched the movie Kids a few too many times. That's what I'll say. And I think that was one that I watched and I don't know why I was watching it. And I don't know. I just went to the movie store and would get it out on video and I would watch it every weekend.
I guarantee that was a staff pick on at the video store
probably
every day.
At Video One on Hillhurst in Los Feliz. And I watched it too many times and it had a very drastic impact on my sense of the world. Also, I think the first couple times I thought it was a documentary.
Well,
that's like the first time I saw what's the movie where they go and the scratching on the camp tent walls?
Blair Witch Project.
That one I saw it in the theaters and I thought it was a documentary and I was so upset.
Yeah, I was like, you can't let Rosario. What are we doing here? I was like, we got to tell her Telly has HIV. I was too upset.
I had a boyfriend in my high school boyfriend, partially my college boyfriend, who had hopes that I wasn't as basic as I was, but, because I really enjoyed Terminator 2 was my jam, as you can tell. And he would get movies we would on Friday night watch Eraserhead, or need to watch what was the original Twin Peaks series, and then they had like Blue Velvet. I don't even know. But
He
I was
was on
like,
a David Lynch kick, is what I'm hearing.
I don't think this is for me, guy. Maybe that was the end of our relationship.
Well, that's the thing I find so interesting about the people who had, I don't know, like a coming of youth in the 90s, is that the perception of art and commerce and popular culture is so different because that was when everything kind of got muddy. Like you were seeing like Kurt Cobain. Oh yeah, you're telling me he's not like cool and amazing, but he's on MTV's. He's sold out. Like no, Nirvana's like pretty hardcore. Biggie Smalls being like at spring break in Lake Havasu City, Arizona on a pontoon boat rapping. Like the commerce and art was starting to come together in a really unique way that same way. I feel like coming out when I talk about stuff that's influenced me, I'll talk to cinephiles. They're like, that influenced you? I'm like, but it was the thing. Like that's what everyone was talking about. And there was something special about it. I mean, so I think it wasn't until later when I got to college when I had friends like who were going to school for film and they were like, oh, you haven't seen this yet? And they'd be smoking cigarettes and like, no, I haven't seen that. And like, you should come over and watch it. And I'd watch them like, oh, this is neat. Like I get it. And I get the impact it had on cinema. But like, did you see all the other movies that came out in the 90s? Because they're incredible.
Right. Right. Well, I also think there's something about like, there's a unique thing that happens when you're like, when somebody's also try to one up or be like, oh no, this is what's important, like how you define what's important. And it's also like right now, not just nostalgia, but like how people's past works are shaped by their current persona or what they're doing. Like it is indescribable to talk about like what growing up in the 90s and being and like clearly it trickled over because I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. But like when all the kids in 7th and 8th grade are wearing Soundgarden t-shirts and it's like a completely different thing that's happening, right? Mm-hmm. And to be like, no, you don't understand. The coolest place ever was to go to a Smashing Pumpkins concert in like a small club in Chicago, and they were amazing. And then I went to their farewell tour in a stadium like my junior year of college, and now fucking Billy Corgan is such a turd, and he's out there, and I'm like, I can't believe I ever liked them. But that's the thing, is that we don't like seeing people age is like such a gift. And then also it's it's like understanding that like you don't always like who everybody becomes, or that like art can exist in a very specific moment. Like what Rebecca was saying, like why are all of our musical tastes shaped by X year that like X hormone hit our bodies?
Also you can still love his music and have loved that experience, and he might have also been a turd then.
Right.
You know, I mean, we just didn't have the same information about people, or what information, whatever. You don't have the same access at that time. That's so different. And we just didn't, I was like, I'll fucking dance to anything on the Siamese Dreams album, like that, like I'll make music videos in the backyard of my friend's house today, which is what I did. A lot of.
Well, it's funny because, like, to your point about developing these certain senses, I look at certain movies and I'm like, this is what, like when I was doing my challenge of like, what is my favorite movie of all time? One of my darlings that didn't make in the top 10. I'm like, but to this day, I'm like, it deserves it. But on paper, it cannot, is I Know What You Did Last Summer. Because I remember seeing that, and that movie's in theaters. I'm like, this movie's incredible. And like the soundtrack came out on vinyl like 3 or 4 years ago. I bought it. I'm like, I wonder if it's any good. And it is. And that was such a special time. Like, going to college, watching that movie in the cinema in the 90s. Like, it was so good. I don't know if that was in the 90s or early 2000s. But but it doesn't hold up. I mean, for me it will, but if I showed it to a kid coming out of like film school right now, they'd be like, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. But there's something interesting about timing and age.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to my favorite movie, which is my two favorites, which are Waiting for Guffman and Notting Hill.
Yes.
And I would say I truly don't care if anybody who's young cares about Notting Hill, and if they understand Julia Roberts, because if they don't, that's honestly their problem and their loss. She is so extraordinary. Her life's work has been so great. Everything she it's like completely, she is so excellent in everything. And Notting Hill is a perfect film that actually has like, the main thing it is lacking is anybody who's not white.
Right. Yeah.
But I've decided for me, and I'm going to put this out there and I want to hear your thoughts on it. In watching old movies, again, we watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with the kids. So good. Is it when you watch some of these movies from our youth, the parts where that you can still watch are the ones where I'm like, well, either it's a movie that was about, or a TV show that was entirely about people of color, right? So A Different World or what have you, or everyone is white. It's when there's like Long Duck Dong and you're like, no, we just can't, we'll just never watch this movie ever. There's not like trying to explain it away. It's just not working. Mm-hmm. But it's like, there's something about Nottingham. I'm like, she's great. He's great. They're figuring it out. It's delightful. They seem like grown-ups. Obviously, I Google each time that she's 30 years old when she made it. And I'm like, that's very confusing for me at this stage of my life. But there's some of that stuff that just, it like holds for me in a way that I could watch endlessly. Yeah. That they're like, I feel like something like Waiting for Guffman, weird comedy. I wonder how that holds. Like our generation inherited, at least there was a lot of people I worked who did theater and stuff who loved, and Monty Python stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. And I wonder, I mean, we still enjoy watching it. Neil and I do. My husband, you know him, but I have people listening. Yeah. We enjoy watching Monty Python stuff occasionally and it makes us laugh, but I'm not sure if, are teens discovering Monty Python in the same way and laughing? So. Or does it feel like maybe it was
and Life of Brian also, like they're watching back-to-back double features, Search for the Holy Grail and Life of Brian. Right.
Like I don't know if that it's just to them, does it feel like the Stooges? Do you know what I mean? Because it's so old. It's equivalent age difference. I mean, of when we were watching, you know what I'm saying?
I'm going to ask this question because I'm doing an episode in May where I'm interviewing a bunch of like college students and who are in for like film. And I'm going to specifically ask them and I'll ask them that question. I'll find out, like, have you and your peers watched this? Because it's like going to college. Like you're all like, you've got your peers and you've all consumed the same media. I'm curious if they've seen it.
Totally. I mean, that's the thing about also.
I mean, because like Clockwork Orange, I mean, I think that was kind of, I remember being in high school and like, what is this? I'm like, oh, this is incredible. But like, it was like, I feel like it's same sort of, I don't know. I don't have to do the math here and figure out like the time differences. But
well, that's when you get really fucked up when you start being like, oh my God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you. There's still so many more answers. We could spend another hour going through them, going through all of this. That was really fun. But I do want to talk about what you all do. But I want to know, one, if you could each. I'm gonna start with Amy since you're my top left here, and we'll go clockwise. Where did you grow up, and what did you want to be when you were a kid?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. And I stayed there all my life until moving to New York in 2001. And then I have been here. When I grew up, I wanted to be a writer.
Interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, did you, I know the path that you went down. Did you, like when you were in high school, like I want to write novels, I want to write screenplays, I want to be a journalist. What was it that was most interesting to you?
I want to be a poet. So I think that there were, and like I'm unusual in the sense that like I very much knew exactly like what I wanted to do, and I could see very clearly a few paths that would go down that road. I wanted to be a poet. I wanted to be a journalist. So I think a lot of writers go into journalism because that seems like a more acceptable path, which is crazy to think about. But when I graduated high school in 1997, and then I went to journalism school at Northwestern. And in the olden days of 1997 to 2001, like it was still reasonable to like go to journalism school and then have a career as a journalist. That was still a thing that like people encouraged you to do. It's not, I wouldn't encourage anybody to do that now, not because I don't think that journalism is like one of the most precious professions in the world, but because it's incredibly difficult to sustain your life that way. But I knew that like, I felt that I had that that mission-y feeling. Gabe, my husband, is always like, like journalists really care. You know, like you just have to care so much about what's happening to like literally everybody around you and the place that you live. And so I think I always knew that I wanted to do both of those things. And I wanted to be a poet. I've been like writing horrible poetry since I knew how to write. Do you remember those like
Acrostic.
They were very trendy for like 18 months. They were like gray recycled paper. It was like gray paper because it had been previously used and it wasn't like white notebook paper. But I had a lot of gray notebooks filled with very bad poetry from when I was like 8 or 9 years old on.
And who's to say it's bad?
Love is
It was bad.
great.
I know because I know it was bad because my son is 9.5, and I worked with him on a poet for his literary magazine at school, which by the way, he didn't want to submit to. And I was like, you don't understand that this is, if we have any family legacy, it's working on the school fucking literary magazine. And he wrote a poem and it is very good. And it is, much better than anything I was writing at his age. So I went to university and I studied journalism and poetry. So I did a double major in like, well, there used to be, again, in the olden days, 3 tracks of journalism you could do at Northwestern or at Medill. And it was newspaper, magazine, or broadcast, mostly TV. And then it was sometime like maybe my junior year of college that the student paper, The Daily, which is the best newspaper in the northern suburbs of Chicago, went online. Like they still had a print edition, but like they started posting the stories. And I studied newspaper, and then I did a double major in poetry writing. And I had like a very clear vision of what I thought my life was going to be. One was going to be like as like a very like true artist path, I guess I'd say, like just like writing poems in the woods. This was the period, and the part of our origin story, mine and Rebecca's, that Neil, her husband, who is one of my best friends from high school, that we would like we never submitted one, but we would like always be printing out and sending each other like applications to McDowell and to Yaddo, because those were like the only 2 writing residencies we'd ever heard of. And we'd be like, this is going to be what we're going to do when we grow up. That didn't happen. That was one path.
But if any McDowell or Yaddo folks are out here, we would love.
I would love
a fellowship. Just pay for us to stay somewhere for 3 to 6 months
in your beautiful accommodations in nature.
I would like if it was in Hawaii. I'm just manifesting. Sorry.
Yeah, I think this is great. This is what a lot of our
100%.
career is.
Got to put it out there.
Got to put it out there. So there was that. Or I was going to be like running a bureau in foreign lands, you know, like in Tokyo or in Dubai or in wherever as a journalist. Or I was going to do something like kind of weird and culty in New York City. And I did something weird and culty in New York City. I kind of blended all of the above. Yeah. So I don't. I think my path was like very directed in a lot of ways, even though I did a bunch of different things. But like, I don't have the experience of being like, oh, I never thought I'd end up here, or I had no idea that this would be my life. This is like very clearly one of the 3 lives that I decided like would be mine.
Bravo to you. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for, and that was, I love the way you shared that. It was so thoughtful. And Becca, where'd you grow up, and what did you want to be when you were a kid?
I grew up in Los Angeles, a mile from where I grew up where I live now, having lived many other places for a good 14 years, but in between. But yeah, I grew up in Los Feliz in LA, and as did my dad. So it's a multi-generation Los Felician. Before the Scientology Center was that, it was the Cedars of Lebanon Jewish Hospital. So that's where my dad was born, but now it's the Scientology Center. When I was little, I always did a lot of theater in school. Actually, at the place where my son is in preschool and my daughter went there, I did theater there. Like, you know, just like it was like off kilter productions of fairy tales. So I don't think we ever we didn't sing Disney. We weren't doing like Disney versions, but it was like, Peter Pan or all of those things. Actually, funnily enough, I think I saw Alison Brie being interviewed maybe on Jimmy Fallon a few years ago, and she was talking about it, and I looked her up and I was like, oh my God, I think we did.
No way.
I think she did JCC, Silver Lake JCC musicals with me.
Wasn't her dad he was a journalist for like the trades? I think he did stuff like that. And
I'm sure something like that. I was like, no wonder her face looked so familiar. But anyways, that's just a fun fact. And I always loved doing that. I loved doing theater and performance. I think in some ways as a kid, I thought that I would do acting. Because actually being from LA, maybe I was like, oh, that's a job somebody has.
Oh, for sure.
And so I did a lot of that, but it all kind of makes sense in the end, is that like I did a lot of theater production and also like student leadership stuff. And I think in the end, by the time I got to college, and I was an English major, I was clear to me that I actually liked producing things and not acting in them, and that people are good at acting, and acting is actually a lot of work, and to do really well. And I was like, and I also like to be more in control. Mm-hmm. And I think actors don't get as much control. And so I started just to put on theater, like in kind of experiential theater. So we would take over like a Victorian, like the bottom of a Victorian building on Riverside Drive I went to Columbia in New York, and put on an Oscar Wilde play, Importance of Being Earnest, and like make it all happen and so it takes place in the movie, the play itself takes place in a living room, and there's, and we were doing it in a living room, and, all of those layers of fun and class and fucking with people and putting it together. That was really where I realized like, oh, I liked doing a part in it and saying the most sassy things, and giving myself that part. Maybe that's part of it, but also, really making something happen and knowing that you have a small budget, or and pushing it to happen, and also making it an experience you have to have. These are the 4 nights you get to have this experience in real life, and so it continues away. And then I worked in like Central Park Summer Stage and Lincoln Center, and my dad started to call me an impresaria, which was very cool. And I just think that ultimately that is what it was, just realizing that what I wanted to be was something. I liked something about the experience of real life being together with people, and also art, and at the core of what like a life would be like, of what I thought my career would be like, expressing the depths of humanity through art. Was what I think that was. I understood that was the thing. Did I play Goneril and King Lear in high school, guys? Yeah, it's not a big deal. Okay. I did play it. Yeah.
Did you ever read 1,000 Acres?
No.
Oh, it's so good. It's like it's a adaptation of King Lear, and it's set in Iowa in the 80s, and it's about a farmer, and it's like a family farm that, he has this like empire of 1,000 acres, and he has to divide it between his 3 daughters, or like figure out what his legacy is.
He really fucks up. He fucks Regan and Goneril. It's a whole situation. Anyway, so yeah, then that was sort of the dream, I think. Mm-hmm.
When you went to college with as an English major, what was the intention? Was it creative writing? Did you want to what was your path there?
That's a good. I think I just always loved to read. Honestly, I also had a lot of like experiences of loss and grief in high school, and so I really thought I would do maybe comparative religion or maybe even philosophy, because I was really, I was always really just trying to figure out how we deal with being alive, and I'm not from a sense of depression, which we've talked a little bit about here, that wasn't my particular way in. It was just like, wow, this is very like people just, tragedy is everywhere. And how do we deal with it? How, if this is, you know, the sort of Joseph Campbell idea of like, if living is all dying, then how does all these religions and cultures find ways to tell the stories of it or tell themselves a story of it or cope with it to be alive? And so I thought that would be the thing. And then sometimes it was more boring. And then for me, like, it was just a harder path in. So I took a lot of courses, but it wasn't, it sometimes was less creative in that story, in the way you understood it, or less passionate. And then philosophy is just so hard. Like, I loved taking the courses, but I was like, wait, okay, hold on. So Bertrand Russell, he said this way. And then, you know, it was hard for me to keep track of all of the specific of each person's very nuanced philosophies. And I think I loved taking the class and like sitting on the grass and be like, is this green to you? Like we're all basically high. We weren't actually high in that moment, but is green to you green to me? I don't even know. But so I think English was it just sort of happened really naturally, which is that it's English and comparative literature was what it was called at Columbia. And Columbia is also has a very strict core curriculum. So you really spend the first 2 years reading, it's pretty prescribed what you're meant to take. And I just loved, I think I was able to scratch the itch I had, which was trying to figure out what it means for humans to be figuring out what it means to be alive through art. And that was what reading and books and literature was really ultimately the way that served that same purpose.
Well, that's good because it means you got to consume so much material that you got to see or read things that connected with you. And ultimately, I think whether we realize it or not, when we're consuming media, TV, film, music, whatever it is, we're all becoming experts in it. And we're understanding, if you're being an observer, the triggers that are interesting to you that you find through conversations, like, oh, they're interesting to you. And like, oh, these are the things that people find. These are the parts of the human condition that we all kind of relate to emotionally. And then you ultimately realize the payoff is that when they do those things, you don't feel so alone in the world. Like, oh shit, right? You read a 100%. Poem in your senior year, like, oh, I'm not alone. Someone else went through this and it's okay. Or whatever it is. And those are things that I think that are so special, that you can literally take any genre, any story, any location, any actors, and create things that will make people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves and make them feel a little less alone. So I think that when people do these, I think one of the biggest values of being able to go to school like Columbia or go through a specific track is that, you're forced to consume a ton of stuff because they kind of want you to see, like, go through all this and then we'll guide you through the way to think about it. And along that journey, you're going to find out a little bit about yourself.
It's really interesting that you say that because, as Amy said about journalism too, you're like, or the idea of studying it, right? I completely understand why how messed up it is, how expensive school is, and that the way college particularly is structured is really not for everyone by any means. But I also believe that like a liberal arts education where we were told to read, we had to read and consume things and read and get into it, expanded my way of thinking and thinking about exactly what you're saying, like the human condition and being critical too, applying a critical lens to a lot of these things, being like, wow, this doesn't hold up. This is this person's perspective. I mean, I remember in high school, them being like, who's the narrator? What do we have to know about them? Why, what might me ask about why they would tell the story this way? And I'm still trying to do that all the time in ways that I didn't. I'm like, oh wow, I learned history this way. Who was the narrator? Why are we learning it that way? And I think there's just I feel so lucky, and I want to continue doing that instead of becoming totally narrowed. On the other hand, I only want to watch rom-coms, so I just want everyone to know.
Well, I
I'm
also think
narrow.
like what you're saying, Dwayne, about like being less alone, like that's actually like a principle of probably all of our work, is to see yourself as less alone in the world, and that art connects us, and that these stories connect us, and you do not have to be alone in your experience, or lonely in your experience. Like I believe a lot in solitude, and I think it's so valuable, but loneliness can be devastating. And I think like I was a pretty happy and lonely kid. Like both of those things were true. But what's interesting is about everything we're talking about, like with films or music or visual arts or books and writing, especially, it makes you feel less alone. And I just think that like so much of the world of content that is out there right now is actually the complete opposite. It just makes you feel more and more alone in wanting to consume more just like stuff. We were just talking before getting on to this recording with you about like the study that came out about like the devastating effects of depression that are hitting teen girls, right? Like the CDC just released studies that like there's a 60% increase in girls who have suicidal ideation. Like 1 in 3 girls contemplate suicide, teen girls. There's just like so much that teenage girls in particular, teenagers as a whole are suffering, but girls in particular. And like, it seems like such a glib answer, but like, what is the thing that is the driving force behind so much of their lives that they are taking in all the time? It's content that like does not connect them. It makes them feel more alone all the time. And all I can think is like, well, wouldn't it have been great if fucking Mark Zuckerberg didn't drop out of Harvard and was forced to take some core curriculum fucking humanities classes and philosophy and ethics courses and like read a book that made them actually care about what it means to be human, instead of just saying, this is how I can take advantage of human, like our more primal desires, you know? And it's just like, cause like, I think we've all referenced it a couple of times today. It's just this idea that like, there's so much out there, or like, I can never catch up, or like I haven't seen Bad Sisters and I know I would love it. But I'm too busy watching The Last of Us, which I also love, and I think there's just so much out there, but those are like real stories. But like, really, I would have time to do a lot more things. And I am a 43-year-old woman. If like I didn't spend an hour looking at fucking Instagram or whatever it is. And I just think like when like all of these things that like we call, or like in our industry, people call content now, is that like there's such a difference to me between like what is content and then what is like a piece of work, or like
storytelling,
like a story, like a real story.
I also think there's something about I think there's probably a nice Venn diagram for all of us here on this and in our life experiences, but I always felt the magic of part of what I liked about theater, as an example, was actually the magic of the experience of the audience. Like, what does it mean when you're sitting next to somebody watching? I remember seeing Stanley Tucci and, oh my God, what's Carmela Soprano? What's her name in real life? No, what's Carmela's real name? Edie Falco. Sorry. Yeah, I'm like, sorry. So Edie Falco and Stanley Tucci in a play, right, on Broadway. And there's a nude scene and a sex scene. And you're sitting there in a small audience next to people. And I don't know this old lady on my right and this other person on my left, but we've all wanted to have sex. We've had sex. We might be wishing we had more or less, or we all have and we're sitting with each other, sharing this experience, not sharing what we feel about it, but the energy that is created by that shared experience of this art, of this, that is so charged and feels so alive to me. And it's one of like the greatest things I feel that you can, it's like, now I'm going to get spiritual, but I think that divinity for me, like spirituality, is that creation of some energy that is beyond, is like two or more people created, and it's something that's neither of you, right? It's vibes.
It's
and I
vibes.
think that great art,
Well, your mind was in awe, right? Like you were in awe of something. Yeah.
and great art creates vibes. And I think that that's like
Tagline for the episode.
yeah, I think that's what our, like, you know, and it's an energy between people, or not even just great art, just an experience of great music, or and I don't mean great, like, I mean, we've gone to see Yo-Yo Ma playing the Bach cello suite at, you know, at the Hollywood Bowl. That is great, as is, you know, Notting Hill. But I think that there's it's not even high low, it's something about
Well, there's some, you know,
quality.
Kind of quality, because you're right. Like I had a colleague text me 2 weeks ago about something, and it sent me down a spiral, and he got an essay in text back from me. And he's like, I would love for you to do an entire episode talking about this. He's like, you clearly have some feelings on it. And it was around the word content. And I'm like, I grew up the things I was interested in growing up in the 80s and 90s was skateboarding and graffiti, both of which you could never become really famous at doing it. It didn't give you money. And the whole point of it was to be original. Like if you piece of graffiti and someone else had done it, like you're basically a loser, right? Like what the term is biting. You're biting someone's style. So your letters can even look like.
I like
so
that you
have
explained the term biting to us.
Because there's some people who don't know, and so that taken to the audience. I know you all get. So I had to like completely, because in this text I had to like the audience. I'd be like, okay, I think I need to tell you what this means. So So I was talking about, like, you know, there was a term, like there would be a term for a graffiti artist that was going out for fame, trying to be famous. And it was like a negative connotation in a sense, like, oh, you're trying to become famous. Yuck. And now we live in the opposite culture of that, where everyone's biting, right? Everyone's copying whatever's out there. I mean, literally there's a tool in Instagram that says remix, because I'm taking what you did, I'm doing my own version of it, or talking about it and trying to put my own spin on it. But like, and everyone's out for fame. I mean, so everyone wants to be famous. So to your point, one of the things I'm really trying to like understand is that nuance of like what makes a great story. And you ultimately find through this, my own discovery for the last 3 weeks was around intention. Like, what is my intention for this thing? Like, I'm not intending to be famous. I'm not intending this movie to make the most money. I'm intending to like connect some people to make me feel a little better about themselves. And it doesn't matter the genre. I can do that in a rom-com. I can do that in a paranormal thriller or sci-fi. But like, how do I connect people? And like, you just take a look at the human conditions, like all the things that people experience. I'm going to do a psychological thriller on depression. I'm going to do a romantic comedy on depression. You can go through those things and ultimately figure out a way to be very intentional about the things that you make. And what we're seeing now constantly is formulaic content, right? So even studios, and there's a certain element that just feels formulaic. And so when you look at like a platform or a studio, I have this conversation every year. I reach out to a bunch of people and I say, who's doing the best job curating? It's a single question. And like that number, like of the people who are actually curating a thoughtful, intention-filled, artistic slate is dwindling every year because they're becoming more formulaic. And so I think that's that thing, was when you watch something, you're like, I don't know what the fuck this is. It's interesting, but it's not intentional. And you can tell like the motivations behind it were maybe not aligned with trying to make.
Well, it's like an algorithm.
Yeah.
You're like.
And what we do is like we require so many different partners, right? Like to make film, television, podcasts, you have to align all those partners to be intentional, and you know some aren't going to give a shit. And so you're like, I need more intentional partners, less intentional. And so I think that's the stuff that's being served the most to teens or kids these days. And then on top of that, social media. Yeah, like you have to feel, I think as much as we feel like we're connected, we're like never been so lonely. Right, because like
totally.
And then when you hear something like is so cool and you're like, I don't get it, like I feel worse now. Now I feel less lonely. I feel more lonely because I don't relate to any of this stuff.
Well, I think the other thing that I find about social media, and Rebecca goes through periods where she deletes all social media and then she'll come back for like a work thing, and then she'll be like, well, I got addicted for a month and I feel terrible again.
I may never go back to TikTok. It's too good.
It's too good. But that like you don't have to be lonely if you can find company like in yourself.
Yeah.
Or like in your own thoughts, or like have a conversation with yourself, or like have ideas that occupy you, or that you could like read a book. Because I also think there's something interesting, like, and this is something that Rebecca and I have, even though she's a reader and I'm a reader, different points of view on, because gatherings are like very critical to kind of her point of view as a maker. And for me, I feel like most of the work that I take in has always in my life been like a solitary practice. Like I like to read and be alone, or like as a writer, and maybe this is because of the kind of writer that I am, and like I have worked collaboratively with like other journalists on projects, or like obviously your relationship with your editor is very significant, and like in our work now, I serve more as an editor than as a writer, and like the work that I do with like our writers is really precious and collaborative, but like it's at heart like a very solitary thing to do, but it's that difference between solitary and lonely, because you have so many things that you can think about and occupy yourself with. And the thing about like content and it's real content, it's real work that people are putting into making their remixes, or like making their videos, or like doing their YouTube channel, or do like all of the stuff, like I'll get a little stoned and like watch 30 minutes of like get ready with me makeup videos, and like I enjoy it, it's funny, sometimes they're telling stories, usually I have it on mute, but that's real work and real content. But all it does is make me think, do I want that lip gloss too?
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
it looks exactly like this other lip gloss that I have, it doesn't fill me up in any way, and it doesn't add, it just makes me always feel like I'm at some sort of deficit.
Well,
And
it's
I
almost
think
like the difference is that it, instead of causing you like prompting questions about the world, it just makes you question yourself constantly.
or like it creates cravings for things that like are not.
Well, have you ever had this
real or
experience like where you follow somebody, right? And it's somebody you know, right? Maybe somebody, it's like it's like a friend who maybe you just haven't stayed connected, and they're thriving, and some reason that then they get stuck, and I'm like consumed with that person, and then I'm like, wait, why am I thinking about this person? I actually wish them a good life, and I feel weirdly bad that I'm not engaged with them in their life because they're thriving, and then I unfollow them, and then I'm like, I immediately have no feelings about them. Like, I'm like, someone mentions them. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad that they're doing well. It makes you, I have a lot of that experimentation I do within myself. And I think is to realize how much this is, like, I don't have ADD, and I come from a long line of ADHD people. So it comes with respect. It's just not, I don't have that. My brain doesn't. But if I'm not in a book or reading a book or focused on it, I'm in between. I can spend 2 months in between books because I'm just scrolling nonsense. Or even if it's reading a long article, it's all like, and because the way the format is such made to make your brain do all those things, to have that question, like, do I need to buy more makeup? Not like, that's so interesting about makeup. What is the thought of like, what is, not that everyone needs to be having philosophical thoughts all the time, but like, why do we I was thinking about this morning, like why do we dress ourselves up or do ourselves up? And I love that we do. And everyone in all history always has, in a version of it. So, but it feels, everything feels like distilled to its stupidest or something. Yes. And it's also using our brains in a way, and this is like in the CDC studies, this is like what psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors are saying, is that we're pretty fine-tuned machines, humans. We've been really evolved. We evolved, we're still mortals, and like lots of our bodies are pretty silly, but we're pretty good at dealing with things physically and emotionally. That's how you survive. And then this form of content and technology, which is basically 20 years old. Like it's very, in the history of things, is zero. It's like a sack of cells. And our brains are not equipped. We have not evolved to take in the amount of constant devastation that goes along with being human, right? Bad news or seeing people in the world. We already compared ourselves to our peers just seeing them. But now you see them all the time and think like, wow, their house is so tidy and their kids are thriving. And how did they get them into that camp or some shit, whatever the thing is. And this is not news, but it's like I think our part of where Amy and I are finding a way forward as the Mashup Americans and in the work that we've always been really intentional. And this is where we've always been, pals around all of this, Dwayne, you and Rebecca, is that like we are very intentional and we're intentional about success and what it means to us and how we define it for ourselves, not relative to everybody else. Like we're not like, we're making a podcast company that, well, maybe now it wouldn't happen, but if we had wanted to make a podcast company that sold for a whole buttload of money a few years ago, that would have been the plan we would have had, and we would have done that. We're making a creative studio focusing on mashups in this world, and we're telling those stories, whether it's in original content, in fiction, in partnerships with leading activists and just intentional people. And the success is in building a life of making beautiful, interesting, driving work with us at the center, both me and Amy, and also mashups, hyphen Americans. That is what drives us. And so then to not get confused by the rest. I think that's the work we're doing. Does that make sense?
Well, you have to be. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense because the studios are in the business and the people out there, who are trying to make stuff that's a product, it's their job to market, advertise, and source material that people want to watch. It's the creators and the artists and the writers to go be very mindful and intentional about the content that they sell or they create and do it in a way that is interesting to people who turn into a commodity, right? Like, so it's like, yes, you have to be really intentional. And yeah, it's easy, just like the thing I was saying earlier, like it'd be really easy to create a production company that was just very formulaic and just did what was interesting and not have a mission to make an impact. And it's much more difficult to be intentional and thoughtful about like the way you hire a crew, the partners you want to work with, the stories you want to tell, the people you want to cast, and all those things. It's harder to go that route than just like formulaic, which is ultimately the crux of what we've been talking about. Modern society.
I think it like for us to commit to anything, it has to be like additive to the world. Like if we're creating something, it has to create something good. And I think that also, you raised a really good point that for us has also been critical, which is that it's not just the end product. Like it's not a commodity. The content can become a commodity, but that for us, the essential part of like why we work and is also how we work, and the people that we bring in and the way that we treat people. And, that if the Mashup Americans, if our driving force is like how to be human and answering that question and how to be good to each other, then like how we work is so much of that like everybody that comes into a project of ours understands that and that gets that, and that the actual working process is as critical as the final product is, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean that people aren't like working really hard when they need to work really hard, or that some things suck, but that like when something sucks, because things suck, like we come together and figure out a way to work on it together. And that is as much about integrity as like the artistic integrity. Like, and I think this is, there's like a lot of questions to be asked around like when somebody's a turd, like can you participate in their art or their form or whatever. And for us, that's a question that we're still answering about like art that's already out there. But for the stuff that we make, it doesn't feel like mashup, or it doesn't feel right unless we know that we're operating the way that we want to or that we believe in. And that makes it, I think earlier when you were talking about how like you line up partners and who gets the buy-in and who gets to say and who can be kind of like off hands or, doesn't need to care that much. It's like so critical to get that right. because otherwise then you find yourself in a position where you're like, wait, this is not me. I don't like how I am in this interaction, you know?
I think there's a sense of what does it mean to be, and I don't mean that, I think we're all hypocrites and we're all doing all the things all the time. So, and I would love for, especially like our fiction show, Love Noraebang, I think it would be the best fucking Netflix show that ever got made. Like, it is so juicy and good and, you know, and like fun and soapy and like I you know, again, I love rom-coms and, you know, like La Bouche. So, but I feel like there's a sense of how you operate being aligned that I think, especially as we age, feels more. And, you know, I was saying this to Amy about, you know, we were having some interactions with some folks last week, and I just kept saying, I'm trying to be introspective about what it is that I'm doing in this situation, why this particular kind of interaction keeps happening. Because there must be something that I'm bringing to this that I'm doing that keeps fomenting a certain kind of conversation. And there's also the other piece of it is that I don't want to be in relationship to anybody right now where I can't be totally myself and totally clear. I've never wanted that, but now I know myself even better, that alignment of my own needs, and to say like, hey, this isn't working the way this is. Can we adjust it? Like, that feels like I want to operate that way all the time. I just want to be, and I think that's the way we think about our work too. It's like, it's not that everything is fixed or this is the right way or the wrong way or something can't be commercial or has to be too arts. It's none of that. It's just that the way that we do it has, you know, alignment and intentionality.
Vibes.
Tell me about how Mashup American came to be.
The Mashup Americans is a boutique creative studio based in New York and Los Angeles, but everywhere, that is navigating, recentering stories on voices you don't usually hear. We've been out here since 2013. It's really about hyphen America, this sort of idea of being rooted in something rich and also forward looking, and that inherent tension there, which is where all the possibility is. And that's what the Mashup Americans is. We make original content on our website, our podcasts, both a conversational one. We just did a beautiful grief series called Grief Collected, as well as Love Noraebang, our first fiction show last year, podcast, which is up for our podcast of the year.
Congratulations. I saw that.
Very, very cool. And then we work with clients and select clients based on a lot of these criteria, who's the right fit to tell their stories, whether that was, you know, has been when Hello Sunshine and Reese Witherspoon were starting and knew that it would take them 3 to 4 years for their TV shows to come out. We help them tell their brand story really early on, 2017, 2018, 2019, in the form of podcasts. So often that's the format we're using, but we do in multiple things. We started in 2013. We were friends through my husband, who is a friend of Amy's from high school. And it was sort of newly married, having children, and figuring out, you know, Amy's Korean American, married to a Mexican Colombian American, and I'm a Salvadoran Jewish American, and my husband's a, you know, British American, I don't know, blonde, and sort of, I wouldn't call him a hyphen. And then navigating, you know, what do you name your kids? What languages do you speak? And realizing that the world and the stories that we were seeing did not reflect the demographic we lived in. We all are, that everyone around us was a version of. And so that was a like, oh, why not us? Like, what are we waiting for? Who's going to tell these stories? And under, you know, in the Obama era, that felt almost like this will be passe. It wasn't. And it became even more critical over time to be really clear about. So everything from being explicit, and a lot of our original content is explicitly about mashiness, about being a mashup, about defining this demographic. And then our partner content and our client content is the process and the way that you hear it. Ultimately, it's always signature mashup and whose voices you hear and how we make it. But even if the content itself isn't about mashiness.
It's about incepting mashiness.
Oh, we love to incept. We're incepting all the time. And then the other thing is that I would just say is, we set out and I got an MBA. Like I was like, okay, we're going to start a business. I need to figure out the market, who exactly the addressable market is, and and I was like doing that work. Then we'll start. And then it was like, let's just start a Tumblr because we had the skills to do it ourselves. What could we do ourselves? That's always been part of how Mashup works. Like, what are the layers of entry, and what are the things that we can do? We are writers. I can mock up a silly graphic, and so we could do all of that until we needed help to design a website or each of those steps, and bring other people in. And I think also the addressable market, nobody was measuring mashiness. And now you can see that between 2010 and 2020, if people who identify as multiracial, more than one race, if are a proxy for mashiness, even if it's just a segment of it, and it's the only one that's now at this point being measured, it increased by 267%. And between,
it makes sense though.
Yeah, and nobody measured it before the year 2000, and in 2000 to 2010, it increased by 32%. So it's always, and we were like, yeah, we know, we're out here. This is like, we know because we're looking at them. So that's the story of the Mashup Americans, which you can find at mashupamericans.com or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Look up the Mashup Americans and Love Noraebang, and that's the main things. Oh, and our newsletter, which comes out every Saturday, has for 9 years. We just switched to Substack from MailChimp. That's a story for another time. And we're very proud of what we've made.
You should be. It's so incredible. And it's so funny. Like I started interviewing people, I think around 2002. And it was via email, letters, postcards, however I could get people's attention, I would try to interview them. And you all had an event at the Grove, at the Farmers Market.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was one of my favorite things that I've seen. I bring that up once a week. I'm not joking. Like it was, it was such an amazing panel that you put together of a diverse group of entrepreneur people in the food space throughout Los Angeles. And, one of the conversations that is throughout the theme of Mashup Americans, from interviews and the website and at the panel, was, what's your comfort food? And I straight up stole that it's my last question on every one of these episodes is I ask people what their comfort food is, because up to that point, I'd been interviewing people probably for like 13, 14 years. And I've tried to think through all the questions that are very simple, that give us a picture of the person and who they are. And it's my favorite question. It was all because of you all. And it's such a beautiful question that shares so much about a person so very quickly. Makes them very vulnerable. It tells a very beautiful story in maybe a word or a sentence. And so I'm going to ask you what your comfort food is, but do you remember who came up with that question?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say no. And that's because I think our brains are very shared at this point. I mean, I'm very lucky to have two Taurus spouses, Amy and Neil. And
our birthdays are 3 days apart.
And I think we're good at giving credit to each other when those things are very distinct. But it feels like the idea of how we ask questions, and I would love to hear your response to this, Amy, but even our list of those kind of questions came together just because we were trying to explore exactly that. What are the questions that will show, other ones were like, what do you spend money on that your parents never would? That sort of give a sense of your mashup life experience, or what's always in your fridge. And food is such a good way in. It's like it's
What
almost,
do you feel guilty about?
that's the less way in. You got to get to that. People have to be
let me
aware.
think. I don't know. It was I can't. I have no idea.
No,
Literally no idea.
What if we could go back in Google Docs and
Who typed it?
Yeah, like go to edit from 2013. When was the last edit on the original questions list from 2013?
I love it, and I appreciate you all. That event was so neat, and like I'm not joking. I bring it up all the time. It's so special, and so yeah. What's your comfort food, Amy?
My comfort food is white rice, kimchi, and fried spam.
Ooh, oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. My kids and husband can always tell. My kids just know it's like one of my favorite foods, but Gabe always knows. He's like, if he comes in, he's like, something happened today, because he can smell the fried spam in the air.
Do you how thick do you cut this spam?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say a quarter of an inch, and it has to be crispy on both sides.
So you pretty thin cuts. I like that.
Pretty thin cuts, because to me, it's like kind of like why I like hash browns. It's surface area to filling. I don't know. It's meat, right? It's meat substance. I genuinely love it so much. It's so good. And I can eat it in lots of different forms, but that's my favorite. Like me being home alone a lot, it was like microwaved white rice with these days people would call it the rebranding of margarine into vegan butter is very funny to me.
Oh,
but
my
we always
God,
had...
I didn't know that.
It's vegan
my number
butter.
one racism is vegans.
It's vegans. It would be like steamed white rice, country crock, and soy sauce, and sometimes an egg if I were like really going crazy. But
oh wait, do you know that this was in my high school cafeteria? There were like styrofoam things of white rice, right? That was, and all the girls, we did a lot of either soy sauce and white rice as like our main meal, or sometimes a little bit of butter. So you would really thrive.
Vegan butter?
Ew. No, it was probably like a butter packet.
And Becca, what is your comfort food?
So similarly in the vein of rice, I would say rice and beans, like that with a little salt, squeeze of lime or lemon, and maybe some avocado that I could eat. That's just it.
Where do you put the lemon? Just across it, all over it?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I don't know. That's not a rice and lemon is not a combo I use. So I'm curious, where does it?
So that's so interesting because another thing that could go in as an asterisk on anything about me is, where do you put the lemon? And the only answer is everywhere. Like that's lime or lemon. Tangy is my favorite flavor. Yes, everywhere. On it, everywhere.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so that's just a rice beans bowl with, salt, avocado, lemon. That'll do it.
I'm going to make it this week. I'll make both your dishes this week. And I'll send you
please
photos.
send
I'm
pics.
so excited. Yes.
I would like you to make both dishes this week tonight and show us you eating it while Train to Busan is playing in the back.
Oh my God, I love this.
And then when Notting Hill is playing and Waiting for Guffman.
Notting Hill is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's mad love for it. I'm not joking. I came across a post of the bookstore and like, this is the address. I'm like, save. I need to go there.
You're like in front of the little blue door.
Yeah.
You're like.
And by the way, I wanted to bring up America's Sweethearts, which I always thought was a really wonderful film around the time of Notting Hill, because I'm a big John Cusack fan.
Oh, you know what? We're going to have to do a rewatch. I might do a Julia Roberts binge.
I liked, in my mind, America's Sweethearts is the origin story of Notting Hill. So I recommend watching that before. Yeah. In my own mind, I've created this this universe.
Wait,
the,
I love
the
this
Julia
for
Roberts
us.
cinematic universe.
Wait, this is how, in my mind, Say Anything is like the prequel to High Fidelity.
I think we could we could probably put all these. I just wish John was in Notting Hill.
In
That would be
Notting Hill?
incredible.
Yeah.
They separated and he went that. So no, I think that's but no, you're right. Saying that makes sense. I love that.
Right? It's him as a high schooler, and then he gets a little broken, and then he opens up his record shop.
Oh, you know what? I do feel High Fidelity and did introduce me to one of my favorite songs of all time, which is Stevie Wonder. I believe when I fall in
So
love with you, it'll be forever. I hope some producers. This is it, you guys. This is my Star Search moment.
This is it.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. We went way over, but thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure.
This was
A
so
joy.
great, Dwayne. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for checking out our chat with Amy and Rebecca. Links in the show notes. And I highly recommend checking out Grief Collected and Love Noraebang. Follow them on Instagram at Mashup Americans. I also highly recommend going to their website and signing up for their newsletter. One note, a little bit of a fact check. I'm sure there's a few throughout the episode, but one that came to mind was Bono's sunglasses. I looked that up. They were not flown to him around the world, but he did have his hat flown to him from London to Italy before a charity event that he was doing there. So the more you know. Finally, the best way you can support the Smith Society podcast is to rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts. It means a lot. Follow your dreams, no matter where they take you.